Hey, what's up guys? So today what I want to do is just go through the process of fitting a piston to a block, or knowing if your block is worn past spec, basically if the sleeve would need to be replaced, or if maybe even your piston was worn. Or let's say you get a billet piston, you get a block, maybe this block, and you want to get it bored out to a 3-inch piston. If you need to know if the piston will fit the cylinder, what you need to know is what you need to figure that out with is a few different tools. Now what I have here is a dial bore gauge. The dial bore gauge goes into the cylinder like so, and measures the clearance between or measures the diameter of the block. Now, in order to set up a dial bore gauge, what you need is a couple of things. You're going to need the piston you're trying to use. You're going to need a micrometer of the correct size. And something else you're going to need is basically a gauge block. So the gauge block is used to set up the micrometer and make sure it's dialed in properly. This here is a 3-inch gauge block. Now this comes with your micrometer. If you get a new, or it should be in the box. If not, you can buy gauge block sets online. They're a few $100s, so these things are pretty expensive if you got to replace them. So what this does is that's how you zero your micrometer. So once you know you have a properly working, properly sized micrometer, what you need to do is take that micrometer and measure the piston. So here's the micrometer here, and here's the piston. Where you want to measure on this is right above the about a 1/4 inch up from the bottom of the piston. So you take the micrometer, and what you want to do is to just have a slight rub. See how it's just rubbing? And when you're setting up your micrometer with your gauge block, you'll get a feel of the amount of tension that you're supposed to have on the micrometer when you're getting it to your correct setting. It's just like anything. If you squeeze down too hard, that can give you an improper reading. If you're too light, that can give you an improper reading. So really, there's a sense of feel when you're doing that. So once you have your micrometer set to the size of the piston, you take your what I usually do is put this in a vise that holds it. Now, on a dial bore gauge, you have the gauge, you have the grip, you have the shaft, and down here, this is called an anvil. Now this anvil is adjustable. You could take this nut off here and replace the anvils. Now there's also, I don't want to lose it. So there's also a nut, now these have exact sizes to them. Like this is a 40 thousandths spacer. And these anvils are interchangeable with different lengths depending upon which dial bore gauge you have. So you choose the correct size anvil, put the retainer nut on it, put your spacer on, and install that onto your dial bore gauge. That gets this in the area it needs to be for size. So if I needed to do a gx200 piston that was 92 millimeters, it's a lot bigger than this, so I would be using a lot longer anvil to start. I'll show you different anvil. So this is how you kind of dial it in. You get it close with this size with the anvils. After that, put it on the micrometer. That's why I have this box here, actually, is to lay this down for the video. So you'd set this usually up in a vise, so you don't need two hands. And I don't know if you're going to be able to see the gauge. But you see how it goes up to the top to the 0? Okay. So once you get the dial bore indicator to the right size where it's reading 0, when, so back here is where it actually reads the size from. So when I push that, it moves the indicator. So these basically just keep it centered on the bore, and this is, where it measures. And this back here, when you depress this, that's what spins this. So if you wanted to adjust your dial, you can loosen this nut and get it, and that's how I zero it out. And then I tighten it back up. This nut here will loosen the face, and then you can fine dial it in. So this one's already been zeroed, and I set my secondary indicator at 2.5 thousandths. Each one of those fine lines on there is a 10 thousandths, or actually 5 10,000ths. So after that, so you would set this secondary indicator. Most piston to bore clearances you're going to do is around 2.5 thousandths. So once you find your 0, you just set that at 2.5 thousandths, and when you're in the block and you're judging it, you want to make sure it's not tighter than that, or it's not, completely out of spec, say 3.5 thousandths or more. If it was 3.5 thousandths or more, you'd probably want to replace the block or get an oversized piston. So this one's all set up, so let's go ahead and do this block now. So let me just move some of the stuff out of the way and see if I can get this camera situated so you can see this. So move this back a little bit more. So what we'll do is we'll run it in this way first. I don't know if it's still within camera. Let me move this block even further back. Alright. Let's see if we can get a reading here. Okay. Oh, you still can't see it on camera. Well, let me tilt the block down. See if we cannot get this figured out here. So what you want to do is you want to run this up and down until you're at, and you'll find out where your setting is using this. You'll find out what your distance is. Now, this block is fine. The clearances in this block, he's putting in a new piston. Even though it's cast, he's still rebuilding it with a billet rod. If anytime I'm doing a bottom end, I always want to check the block, make sure everything's all set. It does take a couple of things to do and a little bit more time, but if you're setting up your pistons and everything is perfect, that way moving forward that you're moving forward on a solid foundation. This block is pretty much perfect from 2.1 10 thousandths to 2.5 10 thousandths. So it's pretty much like a brand new block. Everything's fine to move forward. If in fact you were running 3.5 thousandths or more, you would probably want to check into that. So hope this helps somebody if you were wondering out how to check a block. This is Paul from Paul's Carts, and until next time, have a nice day.